Hi, I'm Thomas from Meaningful Gigs, and welcome back to Heroes of the Creative Revolution. In this episode, I speak with Sam Jones about her background and how she always ensures that her design teams have a seat at the decision-making table. She talks about the importance of aligning the golden triangle, always advocating internally for design, a little Wisconsin athletics, and much more. Let's dive in. Hey Sam, thanks for coming on the show. Really appreciate you taking the time today and coming and speaking to me and our guests. Would love to start simple and just get more information about you and your background, how you got to where you are today.
All right, thanks Thomas. Glad to be here. My background actually started in communication sciences, where I received my bachelor's degree. I always had a passion for both kind of the soft skills and the hard skills. I wasn't entirely clear what I wanted to do when I first got out there, but I started my career in project management, and that's been a common thread that has really stuck with me throughout my whole career to this point. I started working in the Office of Human Resources at the University of Wisconsin, went on from there to work at a startup where I was employee number 7, and at the startup is where I really started to gain my appreciation and love of design work. And so that's when I was working in market insights, and I was wearing many different hats, but still in a very much program management role. And from there, I went on and dabbled in contracting a little bit and supported different insurance teams within American Family, CUNA Mutual Group, and QBE, all in the design, CX, and innovation space. And from there, I landed what I thought was my dream job at a product innovation and design firm. And so everything there was just dedicated and revolved around design. I was able to continue to grow my project management skill set, but also get some on the ground experience being a strategist and UX researcher. And so I really loved doing that. And from there, I worked at Meta as a design program manager, and I felt like I've been doing so much design program management my whole life, but it had never been called that to this point. And so it was nice to have that title, and that's really, really where I'm at now and loving it. I'm currently working for a Fortune 500 financial company as a design operations program manager. And glad to be here and talk about all things DesignOps.
Thanks for that. And I do remember you're based in Madison, right? In Wisconsin?
I am. Yes, I am in Madison, Wisconsin.
Are you born and raised Wisconsin?
I am not, actually. I grew up in Michigan, so still a Midwest girl, but went to school here and have stuck around.
Okay, well, yeah, I actually spent a little time in the Midwest. Like when I was 8 to 12, I was in Indianapolis for a few years, and almost moved to Michigan. But I was asking if you're a Wisconsin like college fan, like the basketball team. Okay,
oh,
so
yes,
Frank Kaminsky.
For
Did you see the game last night?
I did not see the game last night, but I was in school with Frank Kaminsky, and a very big fan of all their sports teams for sure.
From your perspective, what type of environment supports the best type of design work, and how do you go about facilitating that for your team?
Yeah, I think that is a really great question, and honestly comes from the organizational culture. Like, it can't just be within a particular dedicated UX or design area. It needs to be a culture that really embraces user-centered design. And so this means all the way from engineering and data and product to your design. Everybody is bought in on the concept that we are addressing the needs that are most important for our customers, and so or users, or whatever that might look like in your realm. But I've seen leadership encourage this by making sure there are priorities and business goals at the organizational level that tie to specific design metrics, and also just communicating the importance of the ways that we work and being innovative and continually testing. When this culture exists, everybody understands that our roadmaps are going to change. And so they're open to getting data and insights on our customers, and then changing our roadmap to reflect what we've learned. And oftentimes that can be a struggle when we set out to do one thing and we learn something new and want to change that. But when this type of culture exists, that sort of thing is second nature, as well as like everybody understanding that our solutions need to be vetted and grounded in customer research before going live. Then I feel like design becomes design is no longer an afterthought. It's an inherent part of the process. And then design is everybody's work versus just design's work.
Definitely. And as you say, I think it's important to establish or instill that design thinking, not just in the team that's doing design work, but throughout the org, because it can have huge benefits, not just in process, but in overall revenue and bottom line, right?
Definitely.
And when you and I first started talking, you're really passionate about talking about the golden triangle, and why that's important for a line. I don't even want to say what it's about because I want to like give you that honor, but I'm curious, can you describe like the importance of the golden triangle and why it's so important to progress work forward for an organization?
Definitely. Yeah. So I like to think of the design or the golden triangle as design, product, and engineering. And you can imagine that there's some sort of trade-offs or pull effects happening between design and engineering in order to keep that triangle balanced at our products. I think we've all seen different products out there in the world or worked on different projects where things get over-engineered, and that oftentimes comes at the expense of design or usability. And on the other spectrum, over-designed products sometimes come at the expense of the functionality, but we really want to find that sweet middle ground where everything is balanced. So it's really important to have that alignment across all three different disciplines at all times. And that really starts from the get-go and establishing our ways of working. So again, that relates to having a culture that is big on addressing user needs. And it's important for those areas to stay in constant contact with each other to keep aligned, because different things come up at different times that you might not know of. In my experience at Meta, I would regularly sync with all the leads once a week, and we would just kind of talk about generally what's all happening in our area. And that was so beneficial for us to just hear different perspectives and to stay aligned, versus I've seen in other experiences where the product teams are more decentralized, and it makes it harder to understand what some of those risks are that are coming down, or what to expect in terms of outcomes. It's when those three can be aligned, it makes a beautiful product in the end, in my opinion.
I want to talk about building trust and partnerships. It kind of mirrors that alignment that we were talking about just now. What's a key partnership that you've been able to establish across teams, and how are you able to do that? And like, what was the benefit to you and the overall design team?
Definitely. Yeah. I always try and stay close to my product partners no matter what. That's the first group I want to get in and get on their good side. It's important to partner with the engineers, research, and data people too. But I find that in design, we work really closely for a product, and they can become really great advocates for us as well. So when I'm entering a new space, I just kind of take a look at the org chart and understand who are all the people in a given space. And I'll start at the top and start setting up one-on-ones. And I really take a listening approach in those one-on-ones so that I can understand what their expectations are of design. And I always love to ask the question, how can we support one another? That really has created ownership on both sides, not just putting it on them or on design. It also exposes a lot of the risks that we might not have thought of on each of our sides. And so I really try and make those connections early and keep them going throughout the entire product life cycle. So an example, currently I utilize a weekly sync with my product leads that I work the closest with, and they're very dedicated to each of their respective work streams. And so they might not even know amongst themselves sometimes things that are going on, but they apply across the board. And so having that space for us to check in has been really beneficial. Our goals are pretty simple, honestly, but highly effective. We check in on what's currently in flight. We discuss what's coming down the pipeline if we've heard of anything, and we address any blockers. It's a pretty straightforward meeting, but it really mitigates a lot of surprises later on, and it provides a peace of mind for everybody, because there's times where you just don't know something, but somebody else might. And so having that peace of mind for everyone just makes it so much easier to move forward and design great things.
I want to talk about decision making, and this is going back to an episode we had with Dave Maloof on the show, where he's talking about the tension kind of between product and design, and decisions are really usually top down, and there was this kind of movement to have more CDO representation at the same level of like a CTO or a chief product officer. But now I feel like in the industry, we're seeing more of design actually reporting up into product. And so with that in place, I'm curious, how have you ensured that design, at least in your environment, how do you ensure design has a seat at the table when decisions are being made?
Yeah, definitely. I think it really goes back to making those strong connections so that when those big decisions do take place, design is already there. That's the ideal state. However, that doesn't always happen. Some common pitfalls that I've seen are things are moving so quickly, so sometimes decisions are made in haste, or at least that's the excuse that we hear, or maybe a change needed to be made. It was really small, so it wasn't worthy of bringing to design. However, when a culture that embraces user-centered needs already exists, those types of things are easier to avoid. So it really comes top down from the leadership, embracing this type of culture, and then understanding the importance of taking that time now, even if it might seem like extra hours of meetings or whatever to get design in the room. It's really going to create less friction for us later on. And so when you have those connections with your product partners and they understand the value that you can bring to the table, they're more apt to stand up for you when you're not in the room. And they're going to be like, wait, let's wait till Sam or our design partners are in the room until we make this decision. And so I think it really goes back to those strong connections. I also want to say that personally, I found it really helpful to create an operating model, and that is something that you can create with your leads across all the different areas, and that helps prevent when these types of situations will come up. There is something in place to know how to react, and so then it's easier for me when I hear about these things after the fact to point back to, okay, this was the process, this is what we decided on, and here's what happened. Where did that fall apart? Where did that break? And so I think a big part of these big decisions is that there's always room to reflect and improve, and that should be happening across the board, not just within any particular area, product, or design. It needs to be happening with engineering, data, everyone, and making sure that everyone's feedback is heard and listened to, and that there's a clear action plan coming out of it so that we can do better next time. And that needs to be continually revisited so that we can ensure design continues to have a seat at the table.
I think what also gives design a better reason at the table is when they're able to communicate the impact and importance of design. And I'd love to know how you're currently doing that in your role. How do you measure and really demonstrate the impact and value of design, and how have you been successful in your current role and in the past?
I think it's easy to say that design is a very qualitative field and thus not very easy to measure. However, I think that's incorrect, that design can actually make a big impact on the bottom line. personally, I've partnered with data insights and analytics people to really show the value of the work design does in the form of metrics. So turning the qualitative into the quantitative. And so some of those metrics that you probably know about and might not even relate to design are like usability, user engagement, satisfaction, accessibility. Those are just a few, but really creating those stories that relate to the numbers is really important for design in order to continue showing our value. And I think the best way that we can do this is when we understand the overarching program goals and KPIs or key performance indicators. And once we have those from top down, we can then take a look and see, all right, how can design make an impact on those specific KPIs? And then those become the KPIs that we are tracking within design specifically. And sometimes this data doesn't exist yet. So sometimes it means creating a baseline and then collecting that data to be able to go back and show people like leadership and the more technically minded the results and the story through the numbers, and continuing to monitor those and iterate as necessary. But I think really infusing some metrics within design is not only going to drive designers to do better work, but it's also going to show those outside of design that the work we do actually adds a lot of value.
I feel that you being in the design ops role, like a lot of your effort goes into helping people understand like the true value of design, either with metrics or, with providing value. So we'd love to unpack that a bit more. How do you grow the understanding of design internally with those that are less familiar with its true capabilities and kind of see it as a factory for assets and collateral?
Definitely. I think it really all goes back to building those strong partnerships outside of design, and not just creating those connections, but making sure that they really understand what the design team's skill set is and what our capabilities are. A lot of people are surprised that we don't just make things pretty or are changing the colors of the fonts. Like we actually have a lot of experience in conducting user research and grounded in different methodologies. So it's bringing them into our world and allowing them to experience that firsthand. So continuing to showcase our design work and bringing them in when it makes sense, when we're having design reviews, pointing to the data and being able to relate that explicitly to the design deliverables. And then I've also just set up sessions with my partners to help them gain more empathy for what we do, whether that's a design thinking session, sort of like a 101, or including them in design sprints. A lot of times that's a new concept for folks outside of design, and then working in that environment, they can understand a bit more about how we work and the ways that we think. And I think once that empathy is there will inherently be more of a level of respect and thus involvement of design when the time truly calls for it. So I think it's important in design ops, especially, to shield your design team to be able to do their best work possible. You had to break through and make these connections outside to enable these partnerships and understanding of what design actually can do.
I'm curious for your advice in two flavors. Career advice, in two flavors. It's more one, what do you wish you knew back when you first started Design Ops that you know now? And what advice would you give someone who's just starting off in the Design Ops role today?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it might honestly be the same. And I think it really boils down to there isn't one right way of doing design ops. Like, I think I mean, even as shown on this podcast, design ops people come from a lot of different backgrounds, have a lot of different skills, and are serving very unique teams with unique challenges. So it's so important to understand your specific team and where they're starting from and go from there. So there isn't really like a rule book of this is the way to do design ops. It's about meeting the organization where they are today and understanding where we're trying to go. So no matter like what your background is, you can still be a successful design ops leader. I think a good question to continuously ask is, how could this process be better? And I think that will lead you in the right direction.
I'd love to know where you get your inspiration from and who you admire in the field.
Definitely. Yeah, I've been fortunate to have a lot of wonderful colleagues and former bosses. My former boss at Meta, Helen Lee, my former boss at Delve, Amy Lee. They are all amazing advocates for design. And so I've been able to learn from them and grow. So I encourage people just getting into the field to find a mentor in the space, learn from them, and even find other folks that are just getting into it and provide that support as well. And definitely the design ops space is growing. I think it's been out there for some time, but really just starting to get more traction. So it's been hard for me to understand, where can I find all these folks? So LinkedIn has been a huge blessing. Just typing in hashtag design ops and seeing what comes up. I find all kinds of leaders from companies all over, and I see what they're writing about, and then I'm like, oh, this resonates with me, and I'll give them a follow and maybe hopefully connect with them. But there are a lot of great leaders in this space, and definitely on this podcast as well.
Really appreciate you taking the time to come and share your expertise and thoughts with us. That was honestly my last question. Is there anything else that you'd like to plug or say to the audience before we say goodbye?
No, I don't think so. I really appreciate the time, Thomas. This has been a wonderful chat, and I'm glad to talk about something so passionate to me, and I hope it resonates with other people too.
Well, thanks for being so generous with your time, Sam. And if you've enjoyed the episode, wherever you're watching or listening, please be sure to like and subscribe. I'll see you on the next episode.